All right, perfect. All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the special meeting of the Town of Griswold Board of Finance to order, May 7th, 2026 at 6:01 in the Town Hall meeting room. First item on the agenda is the number one roll call to order. We have all members present and we do have a quorum. Second item on the agenda, approval of minutes. A, April 21st, 2026, regular meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the April 21, 2026 regular meeting. Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second on the approval of the meeting minutes as they're presented. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, new business, update on audit. Included in your packet or along with your packet, you should see another little packet there, which is basically it's an email thread. I wanted you all to be able to take a look at that. The long story short is, at our last meeting, there was an inquiry on where we stood with regard to the audit. We were advised that on the school side, there needed to be some cleanup of the student activities account. It would be done by the end of the week. On Wednesday of the following week, I asked Kelly to reach out to the auditors to find out what the status of the audit is. Obviously, we all are very, very sensitive on the status of the audit and the timely completion, having had problems with that in the past. And the response I got from the auditor was contrary to what we were told at the meeting, that there was a much larger or significant list of items owed. I reached out to the superintendent, and I would like to take this opportunity and thank you. He immediately dealt with this, and I would consider him to be the catalyst in ensuring that all of those owed items were completed and completed in a very timely fashion. As we sit right now, I think the latest update is that they are currently going through everything that they received from the school. As long as there are no questions, that should be all set. There are a couple, I think, small items where questions remain, where both Kelly and Eric had to supply some additional information, maybe on some grants, is that correct? And then following that, and assuming that all of that gets answered in a timely manner, they are hopeful that by month's end, they should have financials prepared and reviewed and ready to go. So once again, Sean, I do want to thank you on that and being able to handle that for us. But as we do talk about the audit, one of the things that I was thinking about and moving forward, and I'm wondering if it may be prudent for an extra system of checks and balances, because quite often I feel that as a board, we're in the dark on what the status is, what are the owed items, and we don't know whether we're in a good position or we're in a bad position. So my thought was that I would reach out to the auditor and moving forward, that when there is an ask from a specific, I'll say, agency, whether it's town or school, that ask does not just go to the business manager or the finance director, that it goes to the CEO of that respective entity at the same time, so that there is more than one person in there, and there can be a little bit more of a kind of a watchdog type of a situation to make sure that things are being done in a timely manner. In addition to that, I also want to discuss with the auditing firm some mechanism of I'll say regular reporting back to whoever happens to be the chair of the Board of Finance if they're running into any kind of issues, along the way, or any kind of delays, or they have any concerns, so that we as a board are able to then bring that to the forefront and see if we can help push things along, because the audit is so extremely important to the town in so many ways. And that's all I have on that. Does anybody have any questions or any comments before I move on?
No?
Okay. Then with that, we're going to move on to 3B, working session on budget. Once again, I'll kind of lead off and I'll kind of offer some opinion on my end, and then, let you guys get to work and figure out where we need to land. But just a couple of comments. First, when I go back to what I said early on when we first started the process, I think that, we are really victims of what I consider to be a broken system. We've used the term saturation point when we've talked with regard to, tuition with the school system, and I think we're also kind of at a saturation point here in our local community on the ability for taxpayers to be able to shoulder the burden based on the system that's designed with state aid or lack thereof. I don't foresee it getting any easier. I think that this year perhaps gave us a little bit of a reprieve, but make no mistake, next year the clock more or less is going to reset, and we're going to be in the same position that we are, because we are victims of what I would consider to be a broken system. The municipal aid part goes away, the school additional funding that remains. And we all didn't have any solutions. I don't expect any, next year to be any easier. With regard to the budgets themselves, each year for me, it tends to get, I think, a little bit more difficult in the sense of being able to filter out the noise. In every budget cycle, there seems to be a significant amount of noise, and that's how I'll label it, and quite a bit of divisive comments out there with regard to the budget process and cuts that the Board of Finance is making. In particular, this year, there were quite a few divisive comments with regard to the Board of Education budget. At the end of the day, there's only so much money to go around. That's the unfortunate reality. So I kind of took a minute and did a couple of calculations that I would just want to share. When we look at the capital budget, if we take out, roads and bridges, we're left with $320,226. Out of that $320,226, $94,226 are for capital projects for the Board of Ed. When we look at the long-term debt that we carry, the long-term debt is $2,966,809. Out of that total, $2,038,802. $2,038,802 is carried for the schools out of $2.96 million in long-term debt. So if I take their budget of their proposed budget of $33,655,848, I add in their portion of the long-term debt, I add in their portion of the capital, their ask of the town is $35,788,876. Now, in all fairness, that's not what the taxpayers are really paying. We have $11,660,830 of ECS money. That includes the new round of additional ECS money. And we have $4,500,000 that we have budgeted as revenue for tuition that through their business model they bring in. So I'll say we'll do a direct offset to their budget for both of those. So if we net their budget, their net budget is now $19,628,046. If you take the dollar value of a mill, that's 21.54 mills. 21.54 mills. Now, one of the spreadsheets that we got, or one of the things we got in the back, charts we got in the back, were mill rates. If we were to apply all of that stuff, the mill rate would be at 28.87. So I just use that as an example. If we set a mill rate of 28.87, 21.54 mills is to fund the schools. That leaves 6.33 mills. I went ahead and I said, well, we're going to take town roads and bridges out of it because you know what? That doesn't benefit general government, doesn't benefit the school, it just benefits the town in general. At least 5.25 mills left. So when I read all of these divisive comments about how much the Board of Finance has hurt the school budget, I get a little chippy and I get kind of offended, because I think that if you look at that as an illustration, I think that the Board of Finance has been more than supportive to the Board of Ed and to their budget over the years. So having said that, my opinion on where the budget needs to land is this. Currently at a 1.69 mil increase. If we were to take the additional funding and we were to apply that towards revenues, that would bring us down to a 0.69 mil increase. I personally believe that's where we need to land. I think it's a temporary reprieve because I think we're going to be in a lot of the same position next year as new budgets are introduced and there are increases, natural increases. Some of that aid money goes away, but gosh darn it, I think that the taxpayers need a break, and I think 0.69 is where we need to be. And that's just my opinion, and you guys can work out where you need to be, but I just want to make sure that all of you and the taxpayers kind of know my position on this because it's an important issue.
Scott, I have a question. You said we started right now at 1.69.
Correct.
By applying that money to the income side, it should reduce it to what?
0.69.
0.69.
0.69, correct.
I thought you said 1.69 twice. That's
I'm
why.
sorry.
No.
And maybe I did. If I did, I misspoke. So whoever wants to jump in?
No, I agree with you. I came into the meeting tonight thinking along the same lines that this additional revenue somehow we need to funnel to the taxpayers. So I agree with your assessment at this point.
And I also agree. It's very clear that Hartford is trying to help out the individual taxpayers. If we just use that money to spend more, we're not helping the taxpayers. Our job is to relieve the tax burden. This has been a horrendous year for our neighbors with all the prices going up, all expenses going up. I just think that everyone needs to have a break, and this break should go directly to the taxpayers. I don't even know whether 0.69 will pass, but I said a couple months ago that if I were a betting person, I would bet that 1.69 would not pass.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So when you're talking about that money, you're talking about the money, the 700 and something thousand and the 100 and something thousand, right? Because it's municipal money.
Correct. I think it was 907,000 and some odd
So that's what
dollars.
you're talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The additional ECS and then the municipal aid money.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. My only concern is this. the money that's being for ECS, I believe it is, right, the $700,000, that's gonna be recurring every year. So we're gonna be getting that next year. The money going towards the town is not guaranteed. So by just throwing it in there, we are gonna be having a gap with the government side of that money's next year. It's no different than if we took it out of our emergency fund to fill a gap, because it's not guaranteed revenue for next year, right? So I would caution us that we need to also take some steps to help fill that gap. Otherwise, we're gonna be right off the rip, $200,000 in the hole for the government next year. I've got some thoughts, not for the whole 170,000, but I do have some thoughts when we're ready to look at that. But I won't just put that out there that we don't want to start in the hole next year. I don't think it's fair to the government side. Just know right off the rip, they're gonna be 170 in the hole.
Mark?
You know, I agree that it's a good opportunity to provide our taxpayers, since we all are taxpayers, some relief this year, especially with the raising costs that we have to deal with on the other side. You know, to Rob's point, is well taken, but, you know, I think that we can make appropriate maneuvers after this budget is, if it is voted in place, to account for shortfalls and admit, if not eradicate them, at least minimize them. You know, unfortunately, we don't have the power to dictate to the various parts of the town or school how those budget cuts should be applied. We just tell them what the money's gonna be, and they figure it out. So we'll have to leave it to the town and the school to make the appropriate cuts as they see fit. But I think given the environment we're in, you know, we're kind of making the best out of a bad situation, and I think it's a good way to provide the town with some relief going forward. So I concur with your plan, or at least your thoughts.
Tom? I came up with the same 0.69 after applying the money that came from the state. So I agree with that. I think it's a good relief to the taxpayers for this year, considering everything else that's going on. I think it comes down to, instead of a $900,000 cut to the Board of Education, it's probably $140,000 in that range. And I think that's pretty reasonable, considering their, what they've passed in the past.
I'm not sure I follow you, because we would just be applying that money towards income or revenues, not reinstating cuts. The only way to lower that is cuts would remain intact. Cuts would remain intact, we would be applying that money towards, you know, income or revenues,
Instead of making more cuts.
instead of making additional cuts. So the cuts that we have made to, you know, all entities would all remain intact.
Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have budgetary line item oversight with the town side of the budget, correct? Not just
Correct.
this year, we
Not-
asked them to go forward
Correct.
and give us numbers.
Correct.
But we can,
When push
Line
comes
item.
to shove, we do have, yes. Okay, does anyone have any additional thoughts, changes, additions, anything that they would like to bring forth to the board?
I guess this would be the time to help offset, for, if I may,
Excellent.
to help offset for next year. There was a request for increased hours by the, first was a fire marshal, because of the increase in inspections and buildings that have been going up and whatnot. I would propose that we maintain that increase for this year. but do it on a temporary basis. And it's not guaranteed for next year, and have reports provided to show the need for it for next year as a way of kind of offsetting that 170,000. So that way, it's not written into the budget in concrete for next year.
Okay.
But it's something that's, if there's a need, we can fill it at that point, but it's not guaranteed.
Okay, so you want to keep it intact this year, but re-examine it, we would re-examine the need for it the following year.
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay,
To show that there is a need, but it's not guaranteed. And the same would be for the building official. Because of the fact that both of those positions, they're saying there's a need, so it's kind of like it's all up in the air. Basically, until we see it, it's kind of like hearsay, right? You know it's coming, but is it? I kind of put it in the same thing as, I work at EB, and where I'm working, I hear rumors that we've got some stuff coming in, but until we see it, it's not guaranteed, because the government can always back out and say, no, we're not gonna go through with that project, right? So it's kind of the same thing. So if they can show us that, hey, yes, this is what we've done with these increased hours, we've increased the number of inspections, we've increased the number of this, that, and everything, to show, number one, that the people who are paying the taxes are getting the best bang for their buck, then we can talk about it again next year. But if we were to just go forth with it, it's concrete for next year, it's part of salary. And at that point,
does that sound reasonable?
Sounds reasonable to me, and I knew that this was a concern of yours, Mr. Hamel.
yeah,
So I have been doing a lot of research and looking into his hours, what's done. I'm coming up with, we are so far behind on state mandated inspections for three plus rental units. And I'm coming up with, so far, 508 apartments who we have to do inspections on every 2 years. So I'm doing a little bit more homework so that when the topic comes up again, I will have the homework for you.
no, I appreciate that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
we are the
Absolutely.
steward of the town's money. And
I agree, that was why I
without tightening
started the
belts,
research.
I think we all need to tighten belts. And if there's any fluff, anything that can be streamlined, whatever it may be, I think it's in the taxpayers' best interest that we take a look at it. Not easy, you know, I know it ruffles feathers, but we need to do that, so that way we make sure that the taxpayers are getting the most for their money. I think that's the fairest thing that we can do.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think Rob's concern is a good concern. We did sort of up the fees in that category because of a stated urgent concern. We do that very rarely. So I don't want that to all of a sudden, you know, transform into an automatic, you know, salary pay raise permanently. That wasn't the intent at all. We were trying to alleviate an urgent need and, you know, trying to be responsive, but we also need to be very frugal.
As far as the building inspector is concerned, I think if you look, the revenue side is significantly increased over last year to this year.
Yeah.
So, you know, the man hours are there and the income is there to offset the hours that he's asking for.
Yeah, the increase in permit fees.
Yeah, for sure.
There's definitely a difference.
Very big difference.
That's awesome.
So just to kind of, I guess, build on that in looking, you know, looking ahead to, let's look at a worst-case scenario for next year, and let's just say that the numbers weren't there. Do we need to create a different line item for these additional monies in each one of their budgets to account for that, so that in the event that the numbers aren't there and it gets reduced, we can reduce from that line item as opposed to reducing from an overall salary line item? What are your thoughts on that? I'm just trying to think worst case scenario and what would be cleanest, because I wouldn't want somebody to come back and say, wait a minute, you penalized me and you reduced my salary. Well, we didn't really. If you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're
just.
saying. Right now, how we budget for the part-time employees, they have a base salary, base hourly rate, and as the building inspector came to you and wanted more hours, so
Yeah.
we keep the base salary, hourly rate the same, and we just increase the hours.
Okay,
So, if the next following year, you decrease the hours,
so,
the
okay.
rate, building inspector is part of the union contract, so as a part-time employee, so that rate is established in the union contract. So how you would fluctuate the budget, it would be the hours, so you
Just
don't
the
get
hours.
as many hours.
So that would really be up to the Board of Selectmen then to reduce those as part of their presentation to us ahead of time?
Yes.
Okay.
What about the other position? Is
So,
that a union contract?
no, I don't think so, no.
Okay,
So,
okay.
You know,
I just
this
want to
might
make sure we
be-
don't have any legalese.
No,
that
no,
we have to jump through
absolutely,
hoops.
absolutely.
This
absolutely.
might be something to touch base with the town attorney on, to make sure that we're not wandering into,
I didn't think we were gonna be able to do it on our end. That was kind of, I guess, my point, where it would
right,
have to be done through a reduction of hours on the selectmen's side,
yes,
so.
that's how you
They-
would
they
reduce
would- they own it.
yes. It would be
Okay.
based on the
Okay.
hours, not
Yeah.
the pay rate.
okay.
And that's what I was thinking, you just cut hours.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
Okay,
okay. So I guess I'll pose this question again. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to discuss with the board with regard to this budget before we go on to the next step? The next step being making a motion to send it to town meeting and referendum, so.
My only question to my fellow board members would be, do we want to take additional steps to try to alleviate next year's hurdle in the same manner?
interesting that you say that, because, I support going forward with what we have now, keeping all the cuts in place, going to the taxpayers with 0.69 mil increase. However, if we wanted to consider the fact that we have some debt service that's rolling off the year after next. So next year is going to be a higher debt service year, because we have some debt service rolling on for the first time. Would it make sense to use some of the town government money to take a step forward in another purchase off the capital budget? And then understand that next year, the capital budget will be reduced by that much because we did something a year early, even if it means that we set aside, if we can set aside 100 or 150,000 towards that large, what is it, an $800,000 purchase that we're looking at, one
Town
unit,
truck that we talked about.
in 2 years. So that's the only piece that I'm looking at. Can we utilize this to to flatten out next year a little bit and flatten out the year after next year in order to make that more palatable to the taxpayers?
Yeah,
I don't think we can.
would I ask, where do you plan on taking that money from reserves?
Yeah, well, because we're over our maximum in reserves, yes.
And then we were talking about, I know you and I were speaking about that a little on the side, because we are currently, I think, in the need of 3 trucks for the town, because they were all purchased in the same year, so we're gonna be behind to begin with. We're gonna be a few years
Exactly.
behind.
We're behind,
Even if we do this, we'll still be behind, but at least we'll have a little bit.
exactly.
So you're talking about creating another sub-account within the capital improvement
That
budget
rolls.
and doing a partial fund of that sub-account this year to be used in future years,
Right,
which we have done quite often in the past
Right.
as we've tried to
right.
buy vehicles over an 8-year period or
And
whatever.
it, 150 would be what, 10, point 10, point 11? So I mean, it's paid for one way or the other. It either comes from reserves, and we're still at 0.69, or it comes out of the governor's money.
But if it comes out of the governor's money, our
Then-
mill rate goes up.
Exactly,
I would,
but it's a one-time purchase, it's a one-time.
We allocated or are allocating $320,000 already. What is your best estimate or anticipated balance on the over per policy? And now granted, we have got a swag of that policy, a range.
Fund balance
yeah.
after audit.
Right,
Yeah.
but we
What's your
haven't
best-
taken
I
out,
mean, because we will have allocated 320 from the kind of over by policy, we'll say portion of that. It's all one lump sum of money, but you know, that's kind of how we talk about it.
2025, you're asking for 2025?
For what our current fund balance is.
So we're in the middle of the audit. I would be conservative to say maybe 300,000 coming back for 2025. So 2026 current year right now, I feel the town's expenditures are pretty much in line. I haven't touched the contingency at all. We budgeted USDA money, which we're not gonna pay in current year, we're gonna pay it next year,
Yeah.
so that's beneficial to us right now. I'm bringing in a little more money for the tipping for
Yeah.
the bulky waste.
Yeah.
So maybe after, I don't know the revenue, you know, I know we have some shortfalls in revenue in current year budget.
Right,
So maybe we bring back 400,000?
okay, so currently though, right now, our fund balance, aren't we over by about 600,000 per
Yes,
policy?
Yes, yes.
So we're at 280 roughly, we've still got a swag of about $280,000,
Yeah,
of we're over by policy?
yeah.
Okay. So we could essentially allocate
200?
200 and still be in a kind of in a comfort zone? Would you,
And then
do
the
you,
200 would be allocated for,
I don't know, Gail, what was your
Yeah,
thoughts?
how
One
would
in-
you
between,
allocate it to?
one-
It would be essentially a 2 or 3 year plan to fund the tanker, is that what
I
it's
think it
called?
was- No, that was,
those are gonna be lease purchases,
Yeah.
weren't they not?
Yeah,
it
what's
was to
the,
be funded for the other town truck, because there's actually currently
Town truck.
3 that are all due to
Yeah.
be replaced, but obviously we.
but what's that $800,000 one that's on capital for 2 years from
That's-
now?
That's the
That was
tanker,
the
Oh, yeah,
that's the tanker, that was supposed to, that was supposed to be done
Yeah.
next year,
Right.
along with the town truck.
That's the one, because that's a big nut.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we're gonna do a lease purchase, which will be over a period of time.
But we do have the ability that once that money's there,
Yeah.
to make a transfer between line
Yeah.
items too, as we
Right.
need to kind of massage that further.
Right,
I think
because we had 3
yeah.
that we were really concerned about.
Yeah,
Is there,
town truck.
is there currently a sub-account for that tanker right now, or was that just on the look-ahead plan? So we would
Look-ahead
need to, we would need a motion to create that account and then make a motion to,
yes. And I want to tell, I looked at the debt, 400,000 will roll off in 2028,
Right,
400,000.
but we have,
You want to try to make it even, yeah.
but next year, we're getting an additional hit,
Yes,
higher than this year, correct?
yes,
A
yes,
little bit.
Right,
yes, a little bit, yes.
so we're gonna have a blip next year, so that's why I was thinking of trying to help out so that we're flattening
Yeah.
it, so that we're not having that
Big increase.
crisis.
I did, as a matter of fact, as you're talking about this, it just kind of, I had a conversation today with the Griswold Fire Chief. And we happened to just broach upon, the brush truck and then tanker truck. He did, he had said that he had communicated with Jim Barney on this. He did have a contact with the vendor for the tanker, and even though those trucks are not being bought in the same year, if that tanker truck was purchased next year, they would honor the same, not the same price, there'll be whatever price increase there is, but we will still get the same discount as though we bought them at the same time.
Oh, that's,
So even though it's gonna be a year apart, we would still get that discount. He did receive that from the manufacturer.
did we pull back the money for the
Camera?
audio?
No, that still needs to get motioned and pulled back.
How much was that?
It was $100,000.
I'll make the motion to eliminate,
50,000, you think it was like 50,000?
Budgeted 50,000 for this year.
No, we put 100,000 in next year's budget though, that we need to pull back out, yes.
Yeah, I did just send you an email, final numbers coming in like 15 and change.
Oh, perfect, awesome, okay.
perfect.
With
So-
brand new TVs, but just for you, Bob, that will link together.
Whoa,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we clear that up first?
Yeah.
If someone would like to make a motion that we retract that or rescind it.
I'll make a motion to remove that from our capital budget.
Yep,
100,000 for the camera.
Would you like a second?
okay, we have first and second, any discussion? So the only thing I guess I want to point out was that camera, I believe, was part of that, was part of monies that we were going to use from
Reserves.
surplus from reserves too, so
Yes.
that does free that up. So we have a first and second, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Pulling that back doesn't affect the mill rate,
No.
correct?
No.
No, I just want to make sure, yep.
No?
Gail, would you like to make a motion with regard to?
Well, I'm not certain of the wording for the rollover account.
So why don't you start by making a motion to add a sub-account to capital for
Okay.
the tanker truck?
I'll make a motion to add a sub-account to capital for the tanker truck to hold funds that will be used to purchase that in a future,
Fiscal year 2028.
yeah,
Yep.
2028.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, first and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Was that 200,000 or 100,000?
It was just to create the
Okay.
sub-account.
Yep.
And, just so that we can have a discussion, I would make a motion to direct 200,000 from our surplus to be placed in that sub-account for the tanker within the capital budget.
Can I get a second? Do we have a second? All right, we have first and second discussion. Rob?
Yeah, by identifying this account strictly for the tanker truck, we're linked to that, we can't use that for anything else for next year, is that correct? So if we had decided to go forward, even, we have that money there, but there was another need, say we came up with a different process to fund that tanker truck,
Could we not line item transfer?
You could, yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't know if by having it just linked to it, now it's,
you could. It's part of the budget.
okay, I just didn't.
it's a
I know
line item
sometimes
just
when you
like
do
the rest
stuff
of the
like
line
that, it's
items, right?
locked
So we
into
could
that.
certainly line item, if we had to do a dump truck line item next year, we could create one and move 100,000 from that account to the other account too, right? I mean,
Okay, I just want to make sure,
okay.
just crossed my mind that it would be locked in.
And you're comfortable with that? I mean, okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so there is a motion and a second on the floor to Fund the sub-account for the tanker truck utilizing $200,000 from reserves. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything else? Anyone have anything else they'd like to bring forth with regard to the budget?
Do you need a motion to go forward with
Not yet,
our cuts or anything?
not yet. Once she gives us the,
Okay,
can we get the total number for general government and total number for Board of Ed so we can make that motion?
So, I have this.
and that general government has to go up by the 200,000, yeah.
Because we just did that, 200,000, correct?
Less 100.
Right, but that's coming out of the
Right.
emergency funds, the
But
reserve
in
funds.
theory, it's part of the operating budget.
It'll still
you know.
show, but
It
it
has
gets
to like
balanced
town
by
and then
the
school,
revenue.
and then it comes together.
Okay,
And
good.
then a portion, the 200,000 is gonna come not from the mill rate, but from capital.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, so, it is,
Do we have to make a motion?
so the school will be,
Hours?
okay, so the school will be 33,655,000.
I'm sorry, can you start
The
again?
school will be 33,655,848.
Okay,
And then the town will be 11,602,361.
okay, and that accounts for taking that $100,000 out and adding the $200,000 in,
Yes,
okay. Okay, so general government is 11,602,361. Board of Ed is 33,655,848.
yes.
Okay. So if there isn't anyone that has anything else that they'd like to bring before the board with regard to additional work on the budget, if someone would like to make a motion to bring forward the general government budget at 11,602,361 and the Board of Ed at 33,655,848 to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of town meeting and referendum, we'll entertain that motion.
I'll make the motion then that we go to this Board of Selectmen and for the purpose of going to referendum on the general government, funding it at 11,602,361, and for the Board of Education, 33,655,848.
To include town meeting as well in that,
I didn't, I
Rich?
thought I said that.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't?
no,
Okay, I
Okay.
said referendum. Town meeting, okay.
that's
I'm sorry.
okay.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a first and second, any discussion? Any discussion?
That's a mill rate of,
Oh, and the mill rate will be at?
The mill rate will be at, with a 0.69 increase, so it will be 27.87.
Richard and Gail, will you amend your motions just to include those two values in your motion?
I'll amend the motion to include an increase of 0.69 mil and raising it to a level of 27.87.
And I'll amend my second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? No? Okay, then we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 4, adjournment.
motion that we adjourn?
Okay, there is a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody's so excited.
I know, everybody's
Anyone?
excited for that one, I can't tell them.